welcome back. In this video today I'm going to give an introduction into Amazon CodeCatalyst. Amazon CodeCatalyst is a new service announced by AWS at reInvent 2022, and in today's sessions we're going to cover a high-level overview to give you an introduction on what it is going to help you with, and what are you actually going to do with it. Let's get started. Amazon CodeCatalyst is an all-in-one solution for anything that you need to build, develop, and deploy your software on AWS. It gives you the possibility to not only plan your software releases, but also to actually store your source code, to deploy your software automatically with some neat features that I'm going to talk about in a bit. So it really covers everything. You can reach CodeCatalyst by going onto codecatalyst.aws. This also is a very cool thing because it shows you that you are not going to be relying on the actual AWS console. So this is a service that is completely separated from the AWS console. It has some very cool features. We're going to look at some of them today, and it gives you the possibility to start for free. As you will see later in the video, I have a few projects and a few so-called spaces already available that I'm working with, and I have not yet paid a single dollar for using CodeCatalyst, and I've been using it a lot for a lot of different projects that I'm currently doing. It has some cool functionality like blueprints or also development environments that we're going to look at later in the call, or later in the video, or maybe even also in a follow-up video. Without walking you through the marketing material, I'm going to point you at the blog post that actually announced this new service from AWS. I was in the audience when Werner Vogels announced this service, and I really think that this is going to change the way that we develop software on AWS, which is why I'm putting a lot of context and a lot of information into how to use this service. Today, really a very short overview, giving you some background on how to use it and what it actually is. So let's directly start into it. I'm not going to bore you with looking at how do I set up things or how do I get started. I assume that you have already created your CodeCatalyst account. Your CodeCatalyst account can be created through a so-called builder ID. My builder ID is at Locket, as you can see over here. That has been my nickname for quite a while. You will also see that you will have something that is called spaces on the left-hand side. AWS usually tells you to have one space for each organization or each group of people that you work with. As you can see, I have kind of a few that I've been working with. Locket.cloud being the one that I'm going to use for some showcasing. Pegasus client being my personal project that I'm working on. And then the community spaces where I'm collaborating with other people in the community. So if you don't have a project yet, you can create one here. As you can see, for this space, you can see the activity, you can see the members that are in this space, you can see so-called extensions that you can later install as well. You will need to connect this to AWS account if you want to do deployments. As you can see, I've connected this to one account already. Currently, you can only use the US region because this thing is in preview, but we're going to hopefully see AWS CodeCatalyst also being available in other parts of the world. Until now, this has not been a problem for me, to be honest. So the whole preview project that we're seeing over here is really pretty cool, and I didn't face any troubles with this one yet. Let's get started with creating a project, and I'm going to not start from scratch in this case. I'm going to start with a very simple blueprint. The blueprints that we have over here are countless. I will cover some more in one of the next videos, but to get us started, let's go with a single page application. When selecting the single page application blueprint, you will have the possibility to actually decide on how you want to host your your project. It is also going to tell you a lot of details around how this actually works and what kind of resources will be created. I'm going to skip walking through that because I want to see this overview project. I'm going to call this CodeCatalyst list introduction, and I will need to connect this to an existing AWS account. I need to add this. I need to add an IAM role that will be used by the workflow later to actually do the deployment. So let me pause for a second and log into the console. So this is the role that has now been created with the permissions that are required. I will now hopefully see this role here when selecting the role. You can then choose additional configurations for the blueprint. In my case, I'm going to go with Angular. I'm going to use CloudFront because I like that type of hosting more. I can then use the CDK language over here. I can choose the repository name as well. So I'm going to call this CodeCatalyst introduction. So you can see that over here. And then I'm going to press create project. The moment that I press this, a lot of stuff is going to happen in the background. I'm going to use this project now to walk you through the different aspects of CodeCatalyst. Very brief, because I'm planning to cover this more details around this later. So when this has stopped loading, we will now see the project. So as you can see over here, we had my spaces. Now we have one project here that I can look at. And as part of this project, I can see different information. On the one side, it's the overview. On the overview page, I will see everything that is part of this project. Then on the left-hand side, I will see the different components that CodeCatalyst has. It starts with issues. I'm going to cover issues in more details later, but in short, this is your possibility to track your issues, to plan your issues. You also have a backlog that you can work with at the end, but you can track your work over here. Then you have the code part. In this code part, you do have your source code repositories. At the moment, we only have one. I can also link, I create multiple ones, but I can also link ones. So I can, for example, go over here and then once I've installed the corresponding provider, I could also potentially link to GitHub, existing GitHub projects that I already have. And then I could use those GitHub repositories within my CodeCatalyst project. If I'm using my internal source code management or source repository system, as you can see over here, I also have the possibility to create pull requests for the different branches. And then you can also have so-called development environments to directly do changes as part of this. So let's give it a short try and let's see what we have created as part of this project. What you see is here .cloud9 configuration files for Cloud9, .CodeCatalyst configuration files for CodeCatalyst. We have two different workflows that have been created. We then have the configuration points required for IDEA, IntelliJ and things like that, and also for Visual Studio Code. We then have the CDK code that is required to bring up our infrastructure as we had set up previously. This is going to be written in CDK and in TypeScript. And we do also have the Angular application, which we can actually see over here. As I already mentioned, you could now potentially create files, edit files, create branches from here, work on branches. Over here, you see the commits. You can edit the repository. You can do whatever you want through the user interface, but you can, of course, also clone the repository and get this locally. All right, so I can just do that here, clone it locally, do changes locally, and then push them again. If I do that on a branch, I will be able to also then create changes and get other team members to actually approve the pull requests before they are going to main. Next section on the left-hand side is the CI/CD part. I'm going to also cover this one in more detailed videos. For me, the CI/CD workflows are really the key point to make this product successful, because I believe that they need to be interlinked very much and very detailed with the corresponding AWS infrastructure. So here I do think that the team still has a lot of things to do, and needs to enhance them a little bit more. So they really give you as a developer a little bit more power than you do today. As you can see, as part of this blueprint creation that I did, I've directly seen a workflow coming in, and the workflow has been created and has already been kicked off. It is now executing right now. As you can see, it will execute CDK, it will execute something that is called builder test, and then it will also do a deployment to AWS. As you can see, there's dependencies within it. The very neat thing of the workflows, and I'm going to cover that in one of the next videos as well, is that you actually get the possibility to reuse existing GitHub actions. This is now going to deploy out stuff directly to our AWS account that we have selected previously. And you will then also see that at the end of this workflow execution, we are going to see a CloudFront URL that actually shows this stuff. Next section, within the CI/CD section, you can define different environments. As part of the blueprint, we have set up first one, but if you use different other blueprints, you will get multiple ones, right? With that, you can now replicate the idea of having separate accounts for pre-production or staging accounts, and then for production accounts. You can also configure all of that over here. You have a very cool functionality to define compute tiers. As I'm not upgrading this plan yet, there is no need to actually directly use this. You can define secrets. This is also a functionality that I need to look a little bit more detailed on myself. I did not really do that yet. In the reports, you will later see the test reports, but also workflow execution reports. So you can then see how good is your workflow performing, or maybe also how are your unit tests being performed over here. The last section on the left-hand side is the project settings. In the project settings, you can just configure what is already there. So define members, define notifications. Right now, the system allows to configure notifications to Slack, if I recall correctly. So you cannot define notifications to any other service yet. However, the workflows give a possibility to integrate a notification to a Lambda function, and with the Lambda function, you can obviously then attach an SNS topic or something like that. And I'm hearing from the team that there's going to be more changes coming in pretty much soon. So as you can see, CodeCatalyst as a whole covers everything that you need from a product development perspective. With the issues, you have the possibility to conduct your planning. With the coding part, you can store source code repositories, you can handle pull requests, you can do code changes online in your browser. You're using dev environments, but also with your local IDEs. Run CI/CD workflows and deploy your code directly. And yeah, that's what I wanted to cover from an introduction perspective. Why I do think that CodeCatalyst will really change the way that we develop software, it is because you as a user will get a one and only solution to deploy software on AWS, and it gets you started with defaults and with best practices through the blueprints. So what I'm envisioning going forward is that we're going to get from the CodeCatalyst team the possibility to, as an example, have blueprints that are attached to a certain space. So imagine you as a user setting up a blueprint, and all of your product teams that actually want to develop or want to deploy a similar microservice to your existing account, right, will be able to use this blueprint. And now if you do a change, as an example, in your security best practices, so security rules, you as an administrator could get the possibility to directly apply this to all other projects in the same space. This would be really neat because you can centrally configure things that will then be applied to all other projects. And this will then directly also go into AWS. Before we end this session, let's have a very short look into the run of the workflow if it already completed. I was hoping to also show you some details of the deployment over here, and I think we are now here at the very right time. You will see that there is some deployments going on over here already. So it uses CDK to do the deployment. It is directly deploying out the stack that we created. And hopefully at the end of the deployment, as you can see, the process is still in progress. So I'm going to pause the video for a second before we look at the configuration results again. So we're still waiting for the deployment of the CDK. What takes very long here from a deployment perspective is going to be the CloudFront distribution. So we are really getting a full-fledged deployment set up over here, right? So you can see the front-end CloudFront distribution is still ongoing, but we can also see that if we go to CloudFormation directly. So in the account that we have just chosen, right, we're now going to see the deployment. We will also see the same results of the deployment that we have been seeing in CodeCatalyst over here. So you will then see that this is still in progress, right? And the CloudFront distribution usually takes like 15 or 20 minutes. But this is really neat. You see the information that you have in the stack. You see them as well over here, right? And when the deployment finishes at the end, you're also going to see that as an overview within your workflow. And you can then directly jump over to the resources and also to the application. Cool. With that, I gave you a very brief introduction into CodeCatalyst. Looking forward to see and hear your questions around this if you already have some. Other than that, stay tuned. As a next session for CodeCatalyst, I'm going to look a little bit more detailed into the issues and into the source part of CodeCatalyst. Then we're going to talk about the development environments, and then as the next part of this CodeCatalyst series, I'm going to look at the workflows and how to configure CI/CD pipelines using CodeCatalyst. With that, I would like to say thanks for watching this video. I hope that you liked it and that you learned something new today. If not, please let me know so I can improve my videos going forward. Thanks a lot for watching, and see you soon.